A revolutionary. Say whoa. Trap revolutionary. Got the wave of too scary. Doing this thing like Malcolm ain't by any means necessary. We ain't got it by no one seen hand. We got the master plan. Get the movement going on. Right here where we stand, man. We bucking and stumping, fist pumping. Even though they tried to set us up for failure and kill us, we keep on coming. That's why somebody gotta step up and say something about the bullshit. Because if not, the blind gon' keep leaving.
Hey y'all, what's going on? Yeah, I want to get on here real quick. To make this video about somebody I was talking about yesterday. I kind of had to edit that video and kind of, I don't know, I was, really kind of just going off on that video. I don't think I was, discussing what I wanted to discuss. Without getting too upset. So I didn't want to present myself in that manner. So, I do have the video, but I thought about it, like, man, let me just make another video in that regard. And the video is basically about me talking about, how some people on the internet, some, black people, talk down on basically on their own people. You know what I'm saying? So I was just thinking, about that. And so I had to talk about it, because I was really upset how, like I said, I discussed one person, how he's talking about like reparations. Reparations is like a crutch, basically like a carrot on a stick, dangling in front of our face, but it's something we'll never get. And I posed a question, what about all the lives that were lost? All of the wealth that was lost, that we'll never see, we will never, enjoy because of the institutional slavery, the unjust institutional slavery that we endured, and it affects us now, generations afterward. It affects us. And I would say even in the sense that it's so demeaning and it was so brutal that you have black people, just like I'm talking about this guy, it makes us turn against our own people because of the sheer brutality that's in us. That DNA, and I mentioned that as well, that DNA from us seeing people get lynched, from being brutalized, seeing people get raped, seeing our people just being mistreated. I even said it in the song, starved, beat, kidnapped, from the motherland, and brought over here. That's still within our DNA. That fear, that shock, that we experience, so it comes out in that sense to where, and it's a paradox. It's actually it's a framework for that. When people are brutalized so bad that they see the weak amongst their people, or at least they see somebody else that's weaker, and they're in the same situation with that person, they start talking down and turning their back against that same weak person because they are in that same situation. Then they have less regard for the person that's sharing that brutality, in that situation with them. So you have that aspect. And that's, to me, that's stemmed from slavery. That's like I said before, a psychosociological damage that we experience, where we have our own people, man. They have been brutalized. That brutalization is in their DNA, in their spirit, to where they become like was called a bully coon. They look down on their own people that have been brutalized. They know they have been brutalized and demeaned, oppressed, and repressed, as I mentioned, suppressed, as I mentioned, all of the type of, ways that have been begotten, ways that have been imposed upon our people, they become demeaning towards that, because of that paradox. You know, it's like a bully coon paradox. You know, you see people that have been brutalized and are weakened, then you despise them. And like I said, that is a paradox. It's weird. It's really weird. You know what I mean? And I see it. You know, I see it's another person on here, on the internet as well. You know, he is so enwrapped in his so-called conscience that he speaks down on our people. You know, at times, like, you niggas ain't gonna do nothing. You know, you too scared to challenge, this system or whatever it may be. Instead of saying we need to unite by whatever means it needs to be, unite and do something about these institutions that continue to brutalize us, to oppress us, suppress us, repress us, and however or other ways, to hinder us, or harm us, So I would say that. And in regards to the brother talking about reparations, I would never speak down on us getting reparations or wanting reparations, because so many lives were lost, so many people have been brutalized, and that still is in our DNA. The fear, being segregated, Jim Crow, money stole out of other freedmen's bank. Like I'm saying, even in us attempting to try to rise up, always something happening, and us being stymied and hindered from rising up. When we tried, not that we just laid down and say, man, we can't do nothing about it, we can't help ourselves. Never. We never did that. We tried to rise up and were always hindered. So I would never say, oh, it's making us weak. We never took that route out. We've always tried. But you, in your thought process, say that it's not worth it. It makes us weak, like we are begging for something. We've never done that. We've always tried. So that's what we need to do. Tell the whole story. Look at the whole picture, not just what you think, that we end up doing, acquiescing to the system of brutalization. We never done that. We always try to rise up out of it. And some people, probably you yourself, think that Abraham Lincoln freed us out of slavery. No, it was the Geechee Gullah Wars. We went to war, started killing people. You know what I'm saying? Killing those so-called plantation owners, the so-called slave masters, so we can gain freedom. It wasn't because Abraham Lincoln woke up one day and out the kind of his heart said, oh, I'm abolish slavery. No, it wasn't that. Yeah, it was because we start basically killing folk, to gain our freedom, along with the Sister Harriet Tubman, Soldier John the True, other people, the brother, Frederick Douglass, and others. We fought to get that. We kept, pressing on that issue, in order to win our freedom. Yeah, and I would never even call ourselves slaves, our people, our ancestors slaves. We were prisoners of war. That's what we were. We are not slaves. We were never born that and never will be that. So please, that's what I would say. Let's come with the facts and the totality of the circumstances, the facts around this issue. It would never be where you saying, oh, we weak. It weakens us. We've always tried. That's the thing about it. We've always tried. And like I said, coming out of slavery, Reconstruction era, they unleashed the Ku Klux Klan. Basically the Ku Klux Klan was unleashed to stop the Reconstruction era. We had people going in the House of Representatives, in the Senate, people being elected, had black people being judges. We actually end up erecting towns, schools, hospitals, banks, trying, but still some type of way subverted, where our town was burned, like I mentioned, Rosewood in Florida, Greenwood, Oklahoma, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Black Wall Street, here in Deep Ellum. They ran a highway through that to pretty much break that, community, the stronghold of that community up, where we were strong at. Here in Dallas, Oscarville in Georgia, just put a lake on top of that, and they end up, people drowning, from what it's understood, like just mysteriously drowning. You know what I'm saying? Because it's bad energy, that bad karma, from that happening. Seneca Village, New York, build a park on top of that. But these were black towns. These were predominantly black towns, well-to-do areas. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, we've always tried. And that we don't deserve reparations. It's inane. Like truly inane. It's truly like it blows my mind. Like, to even think something for, especially you as a black man, to even say that it weakens us, and we basically like we just looking for handouts when we've always tried and been stymied, hindered from that uplift, being uplifted, and uplifting ourselves. So yeah, I would always say that, man. You know what I'm saying? And just say it, man. It's getting to the point to where it's ridiculous, man, and people getting on here doing things for clickbait, trying to go viral instead of being real, being yourself, being real with yourself, and being real about yourself to other people and presenting yourself to other people, man. You'd rather just say something to cause whatever stir in people just so you can try to go viral. Come on, bro. It's more than that, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, for real, man. A lot of things are worth more than that. We are worth more than that. It's worth more than just going viral, getting on here just saying anything. You know what I'm saying? It really is. So, yeah, I really do, man. I wish it was more people getting on here trying to provide help instead of people trying to get on her out of some type of monetary gain, because that's basically what it boils down to. People on here for monetary gain, not to try to help, and actually provide some type of frame of reference, to go out for, some type of positive frame of reference or positive, information for us to go out for, So, I would say that, man. Like, it's just getting the word. It's just, come on, man. It's out of hand, And I ain't even talk about, like I said, brother talking about, our people being scared, to challenge the system. Same person talking about, our United States sending ground troops, and you supposed to be a conscious brother. Talking about sending ground troops. What America needs to do is send ground troops to Iran to get the job done. When the National Intelligence Director that just resigned literally told Trump, like, hey, man, it was no threat. Iran was no threat. From his knowledge, he is the National Intelligence Director. So he has the knowledge to understand and know there was no imminent threat from Iran. And the fact that this same director said that being that Trump's leanings towards Israel influenced him to act in the wrong way, and to start a war with them. It was uncalled for. So he said, yeah, I got to resign. I got to resign. Then the professor, Mohammed Marandi, professor of English literature, in Iran, he's one of the main, in Tehran, University in Tehran, he's saying the same thing. Like, man, it was unjustified. And the fact that this media, and you should know, brother, that this media over here is propagandizing the war, trying to get us to be programmed to think that it was justified when you have evidence from a national intelligence director saying, no, it was not. He had to resign because under his conscience, he could not go along with it because it was not justified from his analysis, his, ascertaining of the situation, ascertaining that, the situation, the war was bombing or trying to, go over there and bomb Iran. It wasn't justified, So yeah, come on, man. Like I'm just saying, like, yeah, man. It's just I know we got to do better on that level, man. Instead of trying to, put our people down, what about lifting our people up? What about that? Instead of getting on here and just saying anything, just for the sake of trying to get some attention. Like, come on, man. Like, be more than that, man. I would say you better than that. You know what I'm saying? You are better than that. It ain't all about the monetary gain, man. Sometimes it ain't all, we're all the time. It ain't all about the monetary gain, man. You know what I'm saying? We can get on here and uplift each other, Get in the brother, come and say, brother, you know what I'm saying? I want to lend a helping hand, man. I feel what you talking about. You know, let's work together. Instead of putting your people down saying you niggas ain't gonna do nothing. Or, one reparation, that's weak. You know, come on, man. You gotta, no, that's not, and you're not considering the totality of the situation. You know, so yeah, come on, man. You know, I would say that, you know, we got to do better. You know what I'm saying? Brothers, y'all got to do better on that level, man. You know, instead of talking down on people, man, say something to uplift the people. You know, yeah, cause we out here listening, we out here looking, man. Don't nobody want to be put down and saying, you know, niggas ain't gonna do nothing. You know, cause I already know you got some people like me, it's willing to make the effort. We're willing to make the effort, man, and pay the cost for that. What about those people? Everybody ain't out here scared. You got some real people out here. Everybody's not scared to challenge this system. You know, so let's think about that. Get with the brothers that's willing to do it. Get in there, drop a comment or holler at them, man. You know what I'm saying? Say, brother, I feel you. You know what I'm saying? Let's work together. Instead of saying you niggas ain't gonna do nothing. Niggas scared or, you know. Come on, man. Like, man, it's uncalled for, you know. And we got to do better as a people, you know. So I would say that. But anyway, man, I just want to get on here and say that because the other video I was cussing in it. I wouldn't. I didn't want to put that message out like that. You know, I feel like I'm in a better space to do this video, you know, and put the message out. But anyway, I just want to get on here and say that, man. You know, I hope all of y'all out there doing good. Living life for the love and happiness, doing great and strive for greatness, like every day. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm about. You know, I think that's what we need to be about, you know, together as a whole, you know, individually and collectively. But until the next one, y'all, you know, I appreciate y'all looking, you know, the videos, you know, comment and whatever, you know, and support me. Anyway, till the next one, y'all, all right, y'all. Love y'all.
Fuck it, go ahead and blow off the dough. Step through the maze, man, and became amazing. About to rewrite history and change a page in a crooked book that never told us the true story. Like how we were kings and queens before the slave story, before the killing, stealing, and drug dealing on some real shit. We ran the world.